Hi everyone, this is BritSimon. I think I need to give you some updates about some of the things that have happened today. There's been a status hearing in the lawsuits against the government on the ban, the immigrant ban. Now, just to summarise very briefly, there are 4 different lawsuits. There's the AILA case, which attacks the ban for all sorts of immigrants, not just DV lottery. Then there's the second case, which is called the ACCA case by Siskind, Cook and et al. Apologies to the lawyers there, I don't remember all of your names. But that's a wide-reaching lawsuit, but just for DV lottery plaintiffs. There's 174 plaintiffs, I think, named on that. Then there are 2 cases by Curtis Morrison and Raphael Urena, so those 2 cases are mandamus cases. Mandamus means do your job. So the Curtis Morrison cases are aimed at forcing the government to actually take action on a number of named cases. The other 2 lawsuits they're not class actions officially, but they would have the effect of that. The first action is a class action. They're waiting for certification, but it would have the same effect. They're trying to ban. They're trying to block the ban. Okay, so there's been a status hearing this morning, which was scheduled last week. I think the most important thing that came out of that was that the government have been ordered to produce documentation that shows how they instructed the embassies to behave subsequent to the ban. So that will give us information about what they told the embassies, what they told KCC. If they told KCC, for example, to just stop doing work, that would be important and relevant. If they told the embassies, if they gave them varying instructions on what they could do depending on where the embassies were located. So, for example, if they gave preference to the embassy in Sydney, which we know has done some things differently to other embassies. Why is that? Can we question, why there was preference shown in one embassy and not the other? And so that's going to be interesting to see the official records of the communications from the State Department to the embassies and KCC. I think that's critical for some of the cases. Might become very important. The judge ordered that. And has given the government until next week to come up with that information. The government, I guess, could try and delay that, but that's what they've been told to do so far. That's important. There's been a couple more. There's a deadline to provide that information, but we're still heading towards the 27th of August as being the date when there would be the main hearing. So until the 27th. There's an opportunity for both sides to gather their information, to collect facts, to show this administrative information that I just mentioned, so that the lawyers on both sides can get their arguments ready. And then those arguments would be held in front of the judge on the 27th of August. We may not get an answer on the 27th of August. It could be after that. There is a deadline for the government to respond on the restraining orders, the temporary restraining order requests, by next week. I think it's Tuesday. But again, that's not going to give us a TRO immediately. That's the deadline by which the government have to respond to that filing, that request. So it's important to understand there's a lot going on. There's lots of lawyers involved. There's 4 different cases. There's the government lawyers, etc. I mean, there's just lots of. It's very complex, and even if you're listening to the hearings, a lot of it is simply procedural. But what I can say is that Judge Mehta seems to be totally unafraid to tell the government, whatever he thinks is right. He's questioned, I think, in a slightly suspicious way the embassies are still closed all around the world, and I think he understands that the government are not behaving in good faith in some of those matters, because the embassies in many countries could have been opened completely by now, but they haven't done that, so why not, right? So I'm feeling positive, but there is still this sort of big looming question of time. So let's say we get a judgment at the end of August, beginning of September. That only leaves us a few weeks before the end of the year. And I've explained many times my perspective that because the law is written so clearly that the DV lottery process can't go beyond the deadline, that we've always got that problem. And from the beginning, Curtis Morrison has always argued that it is possible to extend that in some ways. It's not really an extension, but for example, to set aside visas so that someone could be issued that visa after the deadline, even though the deadline has passed. And there has been a case where that was ordered, although it's never actually happened, because there's been sort of arguments on that one particular case. So I think from the beginning on Curtis Morrison's case, the main drive was to force the government to act quickly. By being sued, they tend to act. That's the idea. But as we're now looking at the timing being quite late, now we have to think about, okay, do we have a chance of getting some sort of extension, some sort of time past September 30th? I said the other day, I don't want to build false hope about that, but I heard Charles Cook, who's one of the lawyers, made an interesting point, and it made me sort of sit and think. And essentially, if you can make the case that Trump illegally issued this executive order, and that everything that the state have done in complying with that executive order, particularly if they've done certain things that we'd like to see, like treating people unequally between embassies and that sort of thing, because that's a key tenet of American law, that people should be treated fairly, equally. So if that original executive order was illegal, then the government can't benefit from that. And by benefit, in this case, you'd have to look at the intentions that Trump had. Trump is trying to stop immigration, right? He's not trying to help any of you. I've told you before. He is anti-immigrant because his base are anti-immigrant. Actually, immigrants perform the most disgusting job in the world, which is being married to Trump. So he chooses immigrants for that job, and he's been caught employing illegal immigrants at his golf clubs, at Mar-a-Lago, and so on and so forth. So Trump being Trump is he says he doesn't like immigrants and then uses them in various ways. So anyway, so if we can have the judge agree that original action was illegal, that Trump didn't have the authority to do what he did, and that the intention of that was purely to harm people who had legitimate reason to apply for immigrant rights, etc., then perhaps the judge could say, well, okay, then I'm going to set aside what the deadline is. I'm going to give the selectees, let's say, the benefit of that time back, right? So they've been blocked for 6 months. I'm going to give them 6 months, or maybe he gives them, longer than that. I don't know. Now, like I said, I don't want to fill you full of false hope. This is, in American football terms, would be sort of an enormous pass from the quarterback down to the goal line. This would be a last-minute basketball shot or something like that. Last-moment basketball shot. This is, what's called a Hail Mary. So it's your last chance, and it's a difficult one. But I'm not going to say that it's impossible. I'm not going to say it's probable. I just think, you know, we need to wait and see what happens on that, and I hope the lawyers have everything they need to make those arguments in a convincing way, because clearly Trump is, you know, Trump is Trump. Awful person. Okay, other things that have happened on the immigration front today. A stunning. You gotta love this. Life in America at the moment is nuts. The State Department issued clarification about the other parts of bans which were against some of the non-immigrant visas, such as H1s, J visas, L1s and 2s, H2s, you know, all of those immigrants. Those visa classes were blocked with very minor exceptions by executive order, and the State Department has been sued, and as a response to that has issued guidance today and a statement today, which I'll post a link to, which basically gives so many exceptions to clarifies the exceptions that were always supposed to be there, but gives so many exceptions to each of those classes that it basically negates the ban for those people. And you know, almost, I heard one of the lawyers saying it guts the ban on those classes. We're not talking about diversity now. We're talking about other visa classes, but you know, they've literally, the State Department have literally just sort of torn up the rule book and said, yes, that's the executive order, but here are the rules, and the rules mean that the executive order is just blown to shreds. So clearly the State Department is having somewhat of an internal wrestling match with the nonsense that Trump comes out with, and the realities of what's right and fair and procedural. As I mentioned the other day, Trump came out with 4 executive orders before the weekend. I work in the payroll industry, and he wrote some things about the payroll industry which are so badly worded, so badly you know, thought through, that we just have no way of implementing what Trump came out and wrote as an executive order. It's not even his right to implement it, or to decide that, but he's such an unwise person, such an unwise administration at the moment. He's written some executive order in a hurried way, saying that people could defer some tax till the end of the year, and it's just unimplementable, you know, and we've got 3 weeks to do it, so, you know, it's just crazy. So in all parts of the government, they understand how nutty this situation is with Trump issuing executive orders that are either illegal or make no sense, or are not helpful to anybody. So that's life in America at the moment. You know, it's extraordinary. Anyway, I thought you'd appreciate those updates with regard to the hearing. The main one will be the 27th. We'll have more information as we go through. I'm expecting any moment, by the way, within the next day or so, couple of days, for the next visa bulletin to be released. That should give us the selectee numbers for DV2021, and with those numbers we can calculate how many cases there are, what the widest ranges are, and that sort of thing. So it's going to give us a better idea of whether this year DV2021 is over selected or under selected or just right or whatever. And clearly the executive orders are going to have impact to DV2021. We either do or we don't lose the first 3 months of DV2021 processing time. They're not the busiest 3 months, but still they're 3 months out of 12, and so, you know, there would be some impact. And the other major thing that's happening, of course, is that Biden has chosen his running mate as Kamala Harris. I mentioned on my video the other day I was hopeful that he wouldn't choose Kamala Harris, because the right would see her as too far to the left, and that's exactly what they're doing. They're publicising this, and they're driving up further about Kamala Harris as being pretty much a communist as far as the right are concerned. Balancing that concern, I mean, if you're a Trump supporter at this point, if you've looked at everything that's happening with Trump over the last 3 years and you still don't understand what an idiot he is, then, you know, there's nothing that's going to help you at this point, right? You're beyond help. You have no critical thinking skills, you don't understand simple logic, and you're prepared to make any argument to just believe what you want to believe because you want to believe it, not because it's right. You know, you're gonna complain about Hillary Clinton and Benghazi, but you're not going to say anything about what Putin did with Afghanistan, and, you know, encouraging encouraging assassinations of American troops. You're just going to take that, right? You're going to ignore one thing and pretend that didn't happen, whilst you're going to complain about Benghazi. I mean, stupid. You know, there's so many things like that where people are just not able to balance these things in their head, apparently. But anyway, so Biden's choice of Kamala Harris, I think is, you know, it's the choice he's made, and I'm going to get behind it in every way. Biden's a very good man. She's a very strong, intelligent, powerful woman. She's South Asian, Indian descent, and African American, so she's a woman of color, which, you know, frankly, a woman of color, two big, you know, firsts if she can get that close to the presidency. The laws in this country mean that if, for example, Biden and Harris were, or if Biden's elected as president, Kamala Harris would be second in line to the presidency. So if anything were to happen to Biden, she would become the president. Biden's 78, so you know, whilst I wish him long and happy life, you know, his age is a concern, obviously, and so, you know, we could see Kamala Harris stepping in as the first woman president of America. And, you know, add to that a woman of colour, which would be tremendous, but a big shock to a lot of people in America. I you know, I would love to see that, frankly. It would just be horrific for a lot of people. They still can't get over Obama. A lot of people just, you know, can't get over that time. So so yeah, I'd love to see that. So, you know, we'll see how that goes. The left are very excited about their opportunity and their and about Kamala Harris, for example. So normally you have a competition. There'll be debates between the presidential candidates and the VP candidates. Well, Biden is an old man, but he's fair and he's decent and he's, you know, and he's, you know, he's steady and he's got experience. Trump is a complete lunatic and will lie, you know, on any topic you like, and consistently can be shown to lie on everything, but is aggressive and attacking. So that will be sort of an interesting combination. Mike Pence, the VP for the Vice President at the moment, will have to debate at some point Kamala Harris. Kamala Harris is going to run rings around Mike Pence because Pence is another moron. And so Kamala Harris, you know, will just pull him to pieces in debates. So that's going to be hilarious to watch. And you know, it's going to be a short and unusual campaign this year because the elections are going to be held in November. Trump is busily sowing the seeds of the elections being compromised by, you know, remote voting and that sort of thing, postal voting. But the election will go ahead, and you know, with a bit of luck, we'll see the right outcome. But you know, there's going to be, it'll be an unusual campaign because they're not going to hit the road in the way that they normally would. So you know, it's going to be interesting to see what happens. Anyway, so that's the update from me. I'm just enjoying the weather. My neighbours are enjoying their pool, and you know, it's a tremendous day here in California. But I did want to just give you that update and make sure you're aware. Alright, if I think of anything else, I'll add it in the article. I'll link this video to the article on my website about today's hearing, with a few very brief notes. There's not very much to say about the hearing today. It was a relatively short hearing anyway. So it was a status hearing, where, you know, there's a term for it, but it was more about status, not a hearing as such. Anyway, alright, okay, keep well then. Bye bye.